Now we know it is the tail end of the day and everybody is exhausted, but the topics are very relevant. So can we take the question to Dr. Anuradha regarding ultrasound thyroid?
I just wanted to ask Professor
I am Dr. Sudhakar Reddy. My question is to Dr. Anuradha. So is there any correlation of ultrasound findings of thyroid to cytopathology and histopathology? That is one. Second one is, what about the features, ultrasound features in thyroiditis, inflammatory lesions of the thyroid, which are much more common, like Hashimoto's thyroiditis?
Yeah. To answer the first question, how does it correlate with histopathology? Yeah, ultrasound features are very predictive for histopathology. To tell you a few examples, honeycomb appearance most commonly turns out to be colloid nodule or a nodular hyperplasia. Hypoechoic nodule with irregular margins and microcalcification would turn out to be a papillary carcinoma or one of the malignancies. And a follicular neoplasm would appear as an isoechoic oval lesion. We are now in the process of looking at our data more closely to see if we are able to differentiate follicular neoplasms from FVPTC, and we've got some good results. We've described two signs which would actually help in differentiating these two entities. One is an eccentric hypoechoic nodule sign, and other is a hypoechoic internal septa sign. For want of time, I couldn't show you those, but there are signs which can potentially differentiate these two conditions as well. And to answer your second question, features of diffuse thyroid disease include heterogeneous echotexture, coarse granular appearance, and wavy margins of the thyroid gland. Those are the features. And another additional feature which can be seen in advanced diffuse thyroid disease is hyperechoic internal septations within the thyroid parenchyma. And in a patient with subacute thyroiditis, the lesion would appear exactly like a malignant nodule. The history is what is a great savior in those cases. When you ask the patient, they would say short history, pain, and then it's going to be thyroiditis in the background of diffuse thyroid disease. And if it's the other way around, it's going to be malignant.
One more question.
Vascularity is helpful to some extent, but to tell you, both these lesions will have central vascularity, so it is not very reliable in daily practice.
Thank you. One more question. Follicular neoplasms, adenoma and carcinoma.
Yes.
It is difficult to diagnose even by FNSC.
Yes.
So is it possible to differentiate by ultrasound? Any experiences?
That is what we've just pulled in our data. We've shown that there are features which are useful to differentiate these two entities. Because it's a problem area, that is why we ventured into seeing whether ultrasound is a useful tool in differentiating. There are a couple of papers which have shown a few signs which are helpful in differentiating the two conditions. We've added on a few more and just done a logistic regression analysis to see which are the best predictors to differentiate these two conditions.
Color flow, Doppler, flow velocity measurements, madam, in the nodule and parenchyma can be used to differentiate between these things. Some people have quantitated it. P1, P2, P3, N1, 0 to 3, 4 like that from Europe.
But
you have any idea whether it is practically useful?
Yeah, in daily practice, anything that is quantitative is not useful, and that is the dictum in radiology reporting. Anything that is quantitative is not very helpful.
Can we measure the blood flow velocity with the inferior thyroid artery itself?
We can do all that, but when we're kind of doing 40 ultrasounds a day, all these things actually don't work.
Yes, the role of SESTA MABG scans. It is better than the Doppler or your grayscale ultrasound scan.
In predicting what, sir?
In your diagnostic utility.
No, sesame B scan is not more helpful than ultrasound. Ultrasound scores over all the other modalities, including PET-CT.
It is 78 to 80%.
And CT. In differentiating benign versus malignant thyroid nodules. But in a PET-CT, if there is a hot nodule that is noticed incidentally, that warrants ultrasound screening to exclude malignancy, because 90% of lesions which are picked up incidentally hot on a PET CT, a focal lesion, I'm not talking about diffuse uptake on PET CT, but a focal uptake on PET CT is going to be malignant 90% of times.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Saha sir, what about the role of molecular probes of the FNAC indeterminate lesions? For example, Veracite is marketing in US, almost all the hospitals are sending by post.
Yes,
and
yes.
getting
I
the
think
results, they're getting a better collaboration
there's a
for
growing
diagnosis.
role for that, and a lot of people are studying that in our country also. But I think that was because that was not beyond, that was not in the scope of my discussion. I didn't venture into that. Tomorrow, I think Dr. Unni is going to discuss that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Any
to
more
make a,
questions?
sorry, could I make a comment? I'm Deepak Abraham, I'm from Velo.
One more question.
And I'm the surgeon who handles along with Anuradha. It's just to say that how actually pushing each other has helped us to improve care and bring out better outcomes. And I think she does an ultrasound, we do that same ultrasound back in our own chambers with our own ultrasound machine. We learn and say, we pick up something new, we call her back and say, please do it again, have a look at this. And so that has helped us sort of refine our care. In fact, ultrasound dictates a lot for us because a pathologist still haven't caught on board with us. They give us more diffuse reports, we can't, which are not touching anywhere, whereas ultrasound helps us decide, even in a solitary nodule, if there's a high suspicion of malignancy based on ultrasound and indeterminate on an FNA, we go ahead and do a total after carefully explaining to the patient that there's likely to be malignancy, and if it's going to be a hemi, you'll require a second operation, and that second operation means double the cost. But the outcomes for total thyroidectomy for us, with hyperparathyroidism and nerve injury rates being very much in the very acceptable limits worldwide, or as a good center in any part of the world. Hence, we can offer total thyroidectomy safely for patients who have even a solitary nodule, ultrasound suspicion, but FNAC indeterminate.
I think that's a valid point, because basically we shouldn't go only by ultrasound features, because FNAC is the final gold standard, and in such an indeterminate situation this is going to be a helpful finding, and it's actually contributory to your clinical diagnosis. But then another thing is that this elastography and all these things, even ultrasound imaging, there's a lot of observer variations. So that's why who does it and how much he has done it all matters. So I mean, if you can develop it in your own clinic and you start doing it, and after doing a lot, I think you can easily do that, identify the risk factors. But it is very helpful tool, but you should not go only by that finding. That's very important, because even radiologists agree that there are lesions which looks like a benign, but finally turns out to be malignant, and vice versa. So I think we need to be careful, and the take-home message should be that it's not the final answer, it's a contributory investigation.
Just one question. A few years back, we had a lot of excitement about elastography, turning out to be a very good tool. But from what I understood from what you said, that elastography doesn't stand up to that. Probably doesn't add much information. Is that what you are finally telling us?
What I'm finally telling you about elastography is, the performance of it, lot depends on who's doing it. It's dependent on the observer. And secondly, if you have a very good sonologist who's doing a very good B mode ultrasound, the performance of elastography is not going to be better than B mode, and it's a contributive tool and not a replacement for ultrasound, because there are a lot of lesions where elastography does not work. For example, calcified lesions, mixed solid and cystic lesions. These lesions you cannot use elastography. So elastography has to be done along with the B mode ultrasound. That's the message that I want to convey.
One more message. Rarely the ultrasonography of thyroid is normal, but a clinical examination and occult carcinoma, so where we will get metastasis of the lymph node. So in those cases, So always clinical examination and the FNAC is useful rather than ultrasound examination. Any experiences you have? Where the normal thyroid gland but lymph node metastasis?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any experience like that. Micrometastasis in our study, in TIRAD study that we've done, we've missed micrometastasis, where the pathology had reported 0.2 millimeter cancers, which was incidentally detected in the thyroidectomy specimen.
We've had that experience with MTC, with micro MTCs, very, very small nodules, not picked up on an ultrasound, but on a node was there, and we went in and after we got that FNA from the node to say that was MTC, we went and did a total thyroidectomy, and that specimen had a nodule. So I don't think that we'll have a absolutely normal thyroid nodule with a metastatic node. That I don't think is, the gold standard is going to be HPE, and the nodule should be there. The question a comment for Dr. Rakesh is that we have used ethanol for nodes, small nodes in PTC post-thyroidectomy, like a 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter node with a TG sitting at about 10. And we say that's the only isolated region of the disease. We can go back in and do ethanol. But we've had I had a personal experience of a problem where had a recurrent laryngeal nerve paresis post-ethanol because the node was sitting so close to that, and you just go and inject. It actually causes a lot of, it's like a scatter bomb there. So it destroys a lot of stuff, and it could include your nerve.
Thank you.